What's up top 10 fam, hope you're having an awesome day. I'm your host Ayman Hassan and welcome back to another video. Doing this video is going against the very fiber of my being, you guys. If there is one thing or trope I hate and I'm scared of more than anything, it is abandoned hospitals and asylums. They creep me out on another level and so do all these stories, but I've put my heart rate aside to host this video, so please, just please. If I'm going down, I'm taking all of our viewers with me, so let's go. These are the top 10 scary abandoned hospitals part 2. Starting us off with number 10 is the ALLEGHENY Lunatic Asylum. Located in West Virginia, the beautiful estate opened up in 1863 and was originally meant to house 250 people, but ended up housing close to 2,500. The asylum was problematic from day one. I mean, it had a separate wing just for black people, like. Either way, by 1881 it was disastrous. The hospital was infested with patients, rooms meant for one now housed 4 or 5 people, and the farm and dairy couldn't even meet the demand of so many people, and patients soon began to starve and their mental conditions declined. Patients were uncontrollable, they wouldn't listen to the staff. Most wild patients were actually locked up in cages to save space and just save the staff. When investigating the hospital, a reporter found a body cooler open with a body inside. They found patients sleeping on the floor and freezing due to lack of heat. Sanitation was at an all-time low, and by the time the place closed, its cemetery had been expanded to 666 acres to make space for all the dying people. When visitors go there now, they can feel the rage, like they can feel the bad energy in the air. The asylum was abandoned and nothing was removed from the inside, so it looks exactly as it did when all this was going on. Ripped wallpaper from the patients, visitors have even seen the wallpaper peeling off in front of their eyes. Screams and howls from different wings of the building, cages rattling like someone was taking their anger out on them. Like, it was a lot. It is a lot. Coming in at number 9 is Old CHANGI Hospital. Now this one just legit looks like the set of the horror movie from my nightmares. Crumbling corridors, peeling wallpaper. The abandoned hospital located in Singapore was built way back in 1935. It was used for the British ARF, and when they withdrew 7 years later, the Japanese used it as a prison camp for British soldiers and anyone they deemed to be anti-Japanese. It's said the Japanese secret police had their base there and were known to be ruthless. Many prisoners were tortured tirelessly till they died. Some say they used to impale the severed heads of prisoners on stakes and put them out in public. It was bought in 2006 to be turned into a resort, but that fell through. Some say it was because of financial troubles, while others blame it on the hauntings. Visitors have heard screaming on the property and seen shadow people during the night and day. Some have even seen the apparitions of bloody soldiers walking through the hall, and the creepiest one for me by far is the ghost of a little boy that just sits and stares into the distance. A movie was shot in the hospital and the cast and crew said they heard loud noises and voices and saw a floating woman with a black aura. Groups that go in there tend to have a member disappear, and when they reappear, they all tell the same story. They were following another member away from the group to a desolate part of the hospital when a figure would come and tell them they should never return. Upon exiting the hospital, that member would just disappear completely. I'm getting cringes, I'm getting goosebumps. At number 8 we have BEECHWORTH Asylum. Located in Victoria, BEECHWORTH was surrounded by 106 hectares of farmland, making it self-sufficient for one, but also extremely isolated for two. And it was very easy to get put into BEECHWORTH. All it literally took was a signature from a doctor saying you were unstable, and in you went, my friend. If you went in there, chances are you stayed in there till you died. Only a third of the patients actually ended up getting out. Physicians who worked at the hospital always spoke about brutal treatments, very troubled patients, and no hope of escape for anyone. It opened in 1867, and during its 128 years of being open, around 9,000 patients died on the property. Treatments involved isolation cages, straitjackets, restraint chairs, lobotomies, and electroshock treatments. People who go there have seen the ghost of a young girl who tries to communicate with you in any and all means possible. They've seen the ghost of nurse matron Sharp in the halls as well. But the Gravilla wing, where the electroshock therapy took place, is especially creepy. Visitors report feeling icy cold in that area, and that a woman was pushed out of a window in that ward because another patient wanted her cigarettes. People have reported seeing her body on the ground where it fell all those years ago. Others have heard children laughing. One visitor's son was found talking to himself, and when asked who he was talking to, he said James, a little boy that lives at the asylum. Filling at number 7 slot is the Athens Lunatic Asylum. Contrary to popular belief, this one is located in Ohio, not Athens, Greece. It opened its doors in 1874 and housed violent criminals, children, war vets, etc., and performed lobotomies on the daily pretty much. It was known for lobotomies, and that is not a good look, my friend. A lot of employees were trained to do these kind of procedures, but a lot of them weren't. The asylum's first ever patient was a 12-year-old girl with epilepsy who was thought to be possessed by a demon. I'm so glad our mental health knowledge has developed this much that it doesn't happen anymore. Like, we can't have that. The asylum itself was beautiful, you know, it had gardens, livestock, a dairy. It was like a retirement home, not a hospital. All patient and staff information was kept strictly under wraps, and it stayed mysterious, like you can't even access any information about who was there unless you file paperwork with the state of Ohio. 1,930 people were buried on the property, but if you thought you could find out their identities that way, you're wrong. Each headstone is simply marked with a number and nothing else. Rumors of staff killing patients were rife because of that, and these rumors weren't helped by the fact that in 1978 a female patient disappeared only to be found dead in an abandoned ward ages later. Even till this day you can see the stain on the ground where her corpse was. I feel like I'm gonna be making this face after every story. Now at number 6 is Taunton State Hospital. This type of hospital was kind of like a self-contained city, and honestly the architecture was gorgeous. It looks like the estate of a very wealthy British man that wears a monocle. It was meant to give patients a chance at occupational therapies, you know, let them have fresh air instead of isolating them in dark small rooms. Built in 1854, the psychiatric hospital has a very colourful history. They used to do frontal lobotomies often. In the 1870s, they used to put patients in water tanks and then put them in extreme cold to try and shock them out of their ailment. Later on, electric shock therapy was used on thousands of patients. Jane Toppin, a sociopathic serial killer, was one of its most infamous patients. And if you don't know who Jane is, she confessed to killing at least 31 patients while working as a nurse. Fantastic. And it's said staff at the hospital used to conduct satanic rituals in the basement. They used to take patients down there and they were never seen again. Most of the buildings closed down by 1978 and became a mental health facility for convicted juveniles, but 97% of staff said the conditions of the hospital put everyone at risk. They didn't go into what they meant by conditions. Did they mean the decrepitness of it all? Did they mean the hauntings? Staff later came out saying they always felt uneasy on the property, especially if they went near the basement. One was even driving back there at night and saw screaming patients in the windows that weren't there. Coming in at number 5 is NOCTON Hall. Located in England, during World War I it was used as a home for wounded American officers, but by World War II it was a military hospital. By 1957 it was open to the general public and closed down around 48 years later. However, things were bad, but not when it was a hospital, when it was a home. It's said the ghost of a young girl roams the hall and enjoys being in one bedroom in particular. Staff staying in that room used to get woken up at 4:30 a.m. every night by a young girl crying by their bed. She would say things like a devilish man had done this to her and other things like that. The story claims the ghost is a servant girl who became pregnant after being with the owner's son, and he then later murdered her. The apparition of a grey lady has also been seen around the hall, but God knows who the hell she is, but she's there. At number 4 is the ARARAT Lunatic Asylum. Said to be Australia's most haunted building, this mental institution is the largest abandoned asylum on the continent. It opened its doors in 1867 and 100 people died yearly, whether they were staff, patients, or prisoners. Now you're probably like, what do you mean prisoners? ARARAT used to house the most criminally insane, evil people in the country, and it was also a place for people suffering from mental illness. It used to house around 1,000 patients patients and 500 staff members, and in the 130 years that it was open, there were around 13,000 deaths. These days, the asylum is used for ghost tours, and boy, oh boy, is this place haunted. Visitors have been known to faint unexpectedly, have waves of nausea and pain hit them out of nowhere, and methodical banging sounds can be heard everywhere, and it's most likely the sounds of patients hitting their heads against walls. I mean, the dead patients. But the J ward is where it gets bad. The J ward housed the asylum's most infamous patients like Bill Wallace. Bill shot his friend over a cigarette and then was declared insane. He died there after being held there for 67 years. Another one was Gary Webb, who mutilated himself 70 times and would say nothing but shout, "Get out." When guests go into J ward, they feel like they're being shoved and bitten. The sound of ticking clocks, the desperate shrieking, the shouts of someone saying "get out." It's literally an invite to hell. Get out? Boy, you do not need to tell me twice. You don't even have to tell me once. You won't even find me in there. Filling our number 3 slot is PENNHURST State School and Hospital, previously known as the Eastern Pennsylvania State Institution for the Feeble-Minded and Epileptic. What a mouthful. The hospital opened its doors in 1908 and housed around 10,000 people and went through 79 years of controversy before officially shutting down. The campus was literally huge. It could have been a mini town on its own. It even had its own railroad. Patients sent there were seen as too unfit for citizenship, and the commission did not want them to intermix their genes with the general population. The hospital's chief physician believed every person in there could have been a potential criminal. The hospital's reputation declined rapidly when many residents came out saying they had been neglected and abused. 9 employees were charged for slapping and beating patients, many wheelchair-bound, and forcing patients to assault each other. Patients would have unexplained bruises on them from the staff, and it was horrible. Nowadays, many of the buildings have been torn down, but paranormal activity is rife. Voices, footsteps, screams, abrupt temperature changes, wheelchairs moving on their own, items thrown out of nowhere. It's like the building and the spirits are just working together to show you how bad they used to have it. Audio recordings have picked up on voices saying things like "go away" and "I'll kill you" and "why won't you leave?" Need I say more? I don't think I need to. Now at number 2 is KUHN Memorial Hospital. This has to be one of Mississippi's most haunted buildings for sure. The hospital was open for well over a century before being closed down in 1989. When it initially opened, it was for the smallpox outbreak, but later tended to Civil War soldiers, and then later the yellow fever outbreak. Well, we have a lot of outbreaks as a species, don't we? The hospital itself is a maze of rooms and walls. Some are knocked down, most are spray painted, it's just a whole mess. And despite being abandoned pretty much right after it closed, many paranormal teams have been inside and have seen shadow figures climbing up the walls. Yes, up the walls, and not just floating around the hallways, up the walls. Their cameras captured disembodied voices saying "oh my god" and the voice of a little girl saying "want to come play with me?" Why do dead kids always want to play? I don't want to play with you, like leave me alone. The worst discovery happened in 2015 where a group of ghost hunters ventured into the hospital to check it out. You know, adrenaline junkies, I don't know, I don't get it. Now they ended up finding the murdered body of a missing woman near the entrance, but her blood trails indicated she had come from inside. Her body had been dragged from the 2nd floor in the middle of the hospital to a grassy area outside. Most of her blood was found on the steps. I just need a minute to comprehend this. And finally, at number 1 is GONJIAM Hospital. Located in South Korea, it's said to be one of the most haunted buildings in the country. I mean, CNN even called it the freakiest place in the world. The hospital was randomly and abruptly closed in the 1990s, and people only really found out why ages afterwards. They weren't making money, the conditions were beyond unsanitary, there was no proper sewage disposal, and worst of all, a lot of the doctors themselves were mentally ill and the patients were murderous. All in all, it's just not a good mix. The story goes that patients and staff alike would randomly die without cause and would later be found at their desks or in their beds. It said a doctor on the staff was mentally ill and he was the one killing everyone inside. The bad juju they left behind was so bad that visitors who go in there have come out screaming after hearing moans and seeing shadows and being scratched by nails that aren't even there. And that's it for today's video, guys. I'm sure you could tell when watching this video that these stories really do freak me out. I hate asylums, I hate hospitals, things like that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed listening to this list. Let me know what you guys thought below, and if you'd heard of any of these before, if you've been to any of these, let me know. As always, I'm your host Ayman Hassan, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!